So today we're taking a look at the Buffalo Sabres summer report. Make sure to check out our playlist on the other summer reports that we have done already. We're going to go through all 31 NHL teams, and today we're taking a look at the Buffalo Sabres. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and a subscribe. Let's take a look at the Buffalo Sabres. So the Buffalo Sabres missed the playoffs last year. They were one of the top teams in the Atlantic Division heading into the holiday season and completely nosedived from December to the end of the season. They really struggled to get things going. They had to re-sign guys like Jeff Skinner. They were able to get that done for a pretty high price tag, one of the highest paid wingers this summer. And that was before free agency even opened. They gave that much money. So pretty big contract there for Jeff Skinner, making around 9 million, 8, 9 million. He's making a lot of money. And the Islanders, this always comes back to the Islanders, but the Islanders, the Devils getting Wayne Simmons for fairly cheap, Brock Nelson and Everly for the Islanders. You look at some of these other contracts, and it seems like Skinner just got a little bit overpaid. He's never played in the Stanley Cup playoffs before. Is there something to that? Does he not play for an entire season? Does he kind of just fall off like he did last year? We'll see, but nonetheless, he is contracted to the Boston Bruins for the Buffalo Sabres for a pretty long time. So taking a look at the Buffalo Sabres, the aforementioned Jeff Skinner on the left side. Again, he's a pretty good player, but he hasn't really proven much to us here at the NHL level. So you have to wonder, can he get this team into the playoffs? Jack Eichel down the middle. You wonder how much more he could take of this losing culture in Buffalo right now. You wonder if he's got to be a little bit frustrated. He's shown frustration before with a losing team. He may be in that boat at the end of this year as well. And then Sam Reinhart on the right side. I think that's a pretty good line there for the Buffalo Sabres. Sam Reinhart really turned it on. Probably one of the better storylines for the second half of the season. And more specifically for the Buffalo Sabres, who really were picking straws looking for any positives at the end of last season. Connor Sheary, Casey Middlestat, Kyle Poso down the middle on the second line. Pretty decent second line. Connor Sheary, he played well with the Pittsburgh Penguins, dropped off a little bit with the Buffalo Sabres last year. Hopefully he rebounds again this year. He's had some time in Buffalo. He kind of acclimated, so hopefully he could turn things around this year. Casey Middlestat, the former Minnesota product who played with the Golden Gophers a couple of years ago, really had a lot of expectations for him coming in, and he really hasn't grown the way people were hoping he would last year, but maybe this year he'll be able to get things going for the Sabres. Kyle Poso on the right side. I love Kyle Poso, former New York Islander. One of my favorite players. He's definitely overpaid, but he's still a great player. I love Oposo. Again, if he could stay healthy, that would be really good for the Buffalo Sabres. They need a guy like that to stay healthy in the lineup. Looking at the third line, I love this third line. I really do. You got Jimmy Vesey on the left side, who they acquired from the Rangers for a third-round pick. Pretty cheap for the Buffalo Sabres. I think the Rangers were a little bit drunk on their love for Artemi Panarin. They just, all right, Jimmy Vesey, see you later. So Jimmy Vesey comes in. I think he's still a pretty good player. He's not the player that everybody hoped he would be during the Vesey bidding war, per se, when he was brought into the New York Rangers, but nonetheless a pretty good player. Evan Rodriguez kind of turned things on last year. I think he's a pretty good player there for the Buffalo Sabres. He's going to have a chance to grow this year, and I think with the wingers around him, he's going to be able to grow. And then obviously Marcus Johansson, the newly acquired Marcus Johansson, who they got in free agency, played with the Boston Bruins, went with the Stanley Cup Finals with the Bruins last year. So Marcus Johansson brings some leadership and is a little bit of a veteran now at this point. So really good wingers there for the Buffalo Sabres. I think VC is going to come back have a really good, unreal season, and Marcus Johansson is going to play like he did last year. He's going to have a great year. Looking at the fourth line, you got Vladimir Sobotka on the right. On the left side, Zemgus Girgensons and Johan Larsson. I'm just going to say this straight. I think that's one of the worst fourth lines in the NHL. Zemgus Girgensons, he's had a tough career, and I don't think he's going to turn things around here. He was brought in to be kind of a top six guy, and he just really fell off pretty bad, and that's kind of why I look at the center core. It's a little bit weak. I mean, I do like Rodriguez. I like Middlestat, but we don't know what Middlestat is at this point. Is he really going to be a top six center? Zemgus Girgensons was supposed to be the answer a couple of years ago, and now he's on the fourth line. He's a pending free agent. I don't think he'll be re-signed. Vladimir Sobotka, same thing. He's making a lot of money. He'll be probably out of here. And Johan Larsson. So that's something I wish the Buffalo Sabres fixed a little bit. They don't have a ton of salary cap space to make those moves, and maybe guys don't want to come in, but I don't know. I feel like that fourth line is really weak. There's not a lot of grit to it. There's not really a lot of skill. It's kind of just a fourth line, and it makes you wonder about their depth. What does their depth look like? So we'll have to wait and see. They did trade Alexander Nylander as well, so probably to bring in a guy like Marcus Johansson. But would Oposo be better? Further down the lineup. Maybe not for the salary he's making, but is it maybe what's best for the team? And they should have left Nylander up top. So I'm not sure, but nonetheless, pretty good. Top end, top six. Middlestat's a little bit weary for me, and Oposo, but nonetheless, they have a really good third line to kind of complement that. So their second and third line are pretty even, in my opinion. So I guess that's a better alternative than just having two really good top lines. You have one good first line and two pretty decent, could be interchangeable second lines on the second and third line. So obviously defensive pairings, one of the better pairings in the NHL. I love the two Rasmuses, the Rasmus line. You got Rasmus Dahlin, the first overall pick 2 years ago, and Rasmus Ristolainen, who's been talked about being traded for a long time now. Things have been a little bit quiet on the Ristolainen front, but you wonder if a deal is inevitable because nobody's talking about him. So now that nobody's talking about him, it gives his value a little bit more time to grow, and he could be dealt for the right price. So that's definitely a possibility. So things, again, we're doing a summer report. Things could definitely change. Things could change this afternoon for all we know. So looking at Jake McCabe and Brandon Montour. I love Brandon Montour, former Anaheim Duck, really good shutdown guy. Brandon Montour definitely brings an element to the Buffalo Sabres that they could use. He's a really good, defenseman. He's definitely a top four defenseman. Jake McCabe, I'm a little bit more on the fence about. I don't really know how I feel about McCabe. He was brought in to be, when he was drafted, a top four defenseman, but he's definitely trying to reach that potential this year. I wonder if this is kind of his last shot at being a core piece on a team here with the Sabres. Then things get a little skinny on the left side here for the Buffalo Sabres. You got Marco Scandella. I don't know. He's making a lot of money, so it's hard for me to really judge how good of a player he is when he makes the money he does, but I don't think he is one of the better top six defensemen in the NHL. They do have Colin Miller on the right side, though, which I love. I think that was a great addition, really for a multitude of reasons. One being they got him from Vegas, which is a pretty, they were able to get him for somewhat cheap because Vegas had to move guys out. And two, they obviously bring in depth down, on that top six, which I think is great. And then the other reason being that the Toronto Maple Leafs should have maybe been going after Colin Miller. So now you force them to make a move there with the Colorado Avalanche to trade for Tyson Barrie. They did end up getting their guy, but maybe for not as cheap as they could have with Colin Miller. And then looking at the goaltending. So we have Carter Hutton and Linus Ullmark. So Carter Hutton was really good to start the season. He was good with the St. Louis Blues a couple years back when he was a backup. We knew he was going to be getting pretty well paid, which he did. Didn't have the best second half of the season. Was one of the reasons the Buffalo Sabres really dive-bombed in that second half. And Linus Ullmark, we aren't really sure what we have in Linus Ullmark. Some days he plays really well, some days he really doesn't. So Ullmark, probably a decent backup at best, but he's still young, right? So he still has potential. There's still a possibility that he can make things work in the NHL. And then taking a look at the Buffalo Sabres, their salary cap, guys that will be pending free agents next year. They have over $5.5 million next year. You have Vladimir Sobotka's $3.5 million contract coming off the books next year. Zach Bogosian's over $5 million contract coming off the books. Marco Scandella's $4 million contract as well, and Matt Hunwick's $2.25 left on his contract for this year. So a couple of pretty big contracts there. That's almost $15 million right there, and just guys that probably won't be on the roster next year, if we're going to be honest with ourselves. Then you have guys like Sam Reinhart, Connor Sheary, Jimmy Vesey, Casey Middlestat. They are all going to be free agents next year. Middlestat, a restricted free agent. Vesey, an unrestricted free agent. Connor Sheary, an unrestricted free agent. And Sam Reinhart as well, an unrestricted free agent. So definitely, some moves there for the Buffalo Sabres. They're going to have some salary cap, though, so that helps out. So they'll have $15 million plus hopefully the $1 or $2 million that the salary cap can go up next year would definitely help the Buffalo Sabres. So they could have almost $17-18 million in cap space. Looking at the restricted free agents at this point, whether they go to arbitration or find things out before training camp, hopefully, you have Linus Ullmark and Jake McCabe. Jake McCabe does not have a contract. He is in the top four on this defensive lineup. If he is signed, I think he will be signed. I don't think that's much of an issue. But we'll have to wait and see. Things are a little bit skinny already on that left side. They have a really good right side, but not a huge fan of the left side, so I think they'd want to keep Jake McCabe. And Linus Ullmark, I'm not sure they have a better option in the system right now, so he's probably their best bet for the backup behind Carter Hutton. In terms of playoffs, this is a tough one. It really is, because you have to be telling yourself that the Buffalo Sabres are better. Let's put it this way, they would have had to do enough to make themselves better than the Tampa Bay Lightning, who President's Trophy winning team, the Boston Bruins, who just went to the Stanley Cup Finals, the Toronto Maple Leafs. We know their situation. If they can re-sign Marner, I even without Marner, I still wouldn't doubt the Leafs making the playoffs. You still added Tyson Barrie. They got better, arguably. You have the Florida Panthers with all the money they spent bringing in Sergei Bobrovsky, Artem Anisimov. They really added a couple guys, Nola Cherry, Brett Connolly. They added some guys there, so they're better. So that's 4 right there. So that's 3 in the division making it, and a wild card right there. So where does Buffalo fit in on that? I really don't know, if I'm going to be honest. And do they make the playoffs? Maybe they get in a wild card, but that's even saying a lot, because you already have Florida making it, and even Florida may not even make the playoffs. Imagine a world the Panthers don't make it, right? So I just think that the Metropolitan Division just got so much better. You have the New Jersey Devils. You have the Washington Capitals, who I think are pretty much a lock. You have the Islanders, who you hope can maybe get into a wild card. You have the New York Rangers, the New Jersey Devils, the Philadelphia Flyers. Some would argue got better. I don't think they got better, but some could argue that. The Pittsburgh Penguins, you have to always assume they're in the race when you have guys like Evgeny Malkin and Sidney Crosby in there. And you still have the Columbus Blue Jackets, who they're kind of a dark horse in this situation, but they could very well still make the playoffs. So you just never know. There's just too, and even the Carolina Hurricanes, another team that's a little bit of a dark horse. We just don't know what they're going to be. So with that said, let me know what you guys think of the Buffalo Sabres. Do they make the playoffs? Do they squeeze in there? Or do they really, turn things around? Got some new coaching. Did things work out for the Buffalo Sabres this year? So let me know what you guys think. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and a subscribe. Check out our Instagram at Goal Line Hockey as well. Check out our playlist on the Summer Report series as we continue to look through all 31 NHL teams. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.